All right, afternoon, everybody. Hello, online. Is that the camera for online that's staring at us? Yes. Panel, would you like to wave at the online people? Hello. Just so that you feel, we know you're there. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to come today. Miraculously, my voice is better. It's the ice cream. Yum, yum. Okay, so this is the last session for today. Can we hear a whoop, whoop? Right, gosh, you're all awake now. I mean, the doors are closed, so we're all going to fall asleep in a minute, but we'll be all right. This is good stuff. So if you have any questions, do put them in the chat. For those online, we will be having a Q&A session after this. This is quite an informal discussion. We don't have slides. This is chit-chat time. We have people, sadly, who have had to go get flights, so they're not here. So we have a little bit of gap. So if anyone wants to, not sit next door to someone else, and they won't be offended if you move, so that's fine. So my name is Lou Peck. I am the CEO of the International Bunch. I am moderating this amazing panel of professionals, and I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves, but in 60 seconds or less, and I might time you. What keeps you up at night? And it's not me when we've gone out for dinner going, let's go somewhere. So what keeps you up at night? And, well, who are you?
Thanks very much, Lou. Hello, everybody. My name is Fiona Morley. I am Head of Research, Open Scholarship and Innovation Services at Maynooth University Library and part of the senior management team there. And for anyone who doesn't know where Maynooth is, it's 25 kilometres outside of Dublin and has a distinction of being both very old and very new at the same time, having been instituted as a seminary in 1795, but in its current form, it's an independent university since 1997. What keeps me up at night, apart from the really hot weather in Berlin, is two things really. First is my, I suppose, personal drive to see open access, but the fear of how are we going to make it sustainable, and the understanding that open access, just because it's open, it's not free, and how do we get over that? The second thing is, I suppose, the drive in our university institution in general to seek out to make data-driven decisions, and then how we can kind of support that in our own work by providing information and gathering data that supports that decision making. And I'm very involved in a project at the moment trying to align and streamline our 24 different data sources, as I've discovered, and how we can make that palatable, but also more meaningful in the changing environment we're in, and also understandable to people who are not based in the library, which I think is a challenge in its own right, because I have learned from working outside libraries that people outside of libraries don't always think the way we do. So trying to get that data and tell our story in a way that's understandable by people who are maybe some management levels removed from the institution is that.
Do you ever sleep?
Not really.
Okay, hand over to Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Berg. I'm the Director of Libraries at MIT. Aside from, as you said, the heat and the jet lag, the thing that keeps me up at night is both a challenge and an opportunity, right? So I think most of us in this room and online know that this whole system of communicating research has been flawed and broken for many, many decades. It's never worked perfectly, but I think, at least from my point of view, in the US, all of the cracks have been really exposed, and the brokenness is blatantly obvious, right? And that is both scary, and it keeps me up at night in that way, but it also is an opportunity. I think it is, it's an opportunity where people outside the library who sort of have historically taken the system of communicating research kind of for granted now see sort of how the sausage is made, if you will. And two things that make me see it as an opportunity, as maybe the tide is turning, is the graduate students at MIT, the Graduate Student Council at MIT recently passed a resolution on scientific publishing, where they called for the recognition of preprints. They called for different ways of evaluating research. Just Google MIT graduate student resolution scientific publishing. It's really astounding. My punchline for that is the kids are all right. And also I have had experiences recently with faculty who've never really, again, you know, they sort of publish out of habit and they don't think about it because of the financial crisis. And I won't get into too many details, but the financial crisis at MIT and at other institutions across the US, combined with federal agencies demanding no embargo open access, they now are faced with having to pay to publish where they used to publish, and they don't have the option of not making it, of publishing freely under a subscription subscription model. And so they're starting to wake up to, hey, this isn't right. And I actually had a faculty member who's never thought about how she publishes ever before say to me, maybe I have to rethink my publishing strategy. So I think there's a tiny little window of opportunity right now to get some of the actors that we haven't actually talked about much in these 2 days, to get the scholars, both the young scholars and more senior scholars, to actually change their behavior. You're all on.
It's on? It's on?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Hi, my name is Bianca Kramer. I used to work in libraries for a really long time, at the University Library. I don't anymore, but I'm still very honored to be asked here to still represent the voice of libraries. It's a bit of a weird reverse imposter syndrome, I must say. I'm currently in Panelist as a research analyst and consultant, but also part of my time executive director of the Barcelona Declaration for Open Research Information. So that's also very much my focus on openness. What keeps me up at night, I think, is something that was said yesterday a couple of times, is that paraphrasing in the view of all the large we should overcome our differences between different stakeholders and collaborate more. Yes, but I also want to keep us to be very aware of those differences and where they are coming from. And I'm a bit afraid that we might be glossing over those a little bit too much in the call for more collaboration. And a tiny other thing, and that's really a reflection of having been in the discussion on open access for 15 years. What keeps me up at night is how we lost the plot on gold open access. How do we allow gold open access to now mean APC-based publishing instead of just publishing, being open access at the publisher, independent of business model? It's a pet peeve, but yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Danny Kingsley. I did my PhD on different
He just needs to swap the mic.
Okay, that's louder. Oh, okay. So the thing that keeps me up at night partly is time zones. So if you're in Australia, you are inevitably up at 1 o'clock in the morning if you want to be part of the international debate, which means it's really hard because not very many people do that. And so Australia is really, really isolated, and New Zealand, New Zealand really isolated. It's challenging. There's a few of us that have went over to the UK and worked in the UK and went back and went through reverse culture shock, and we know what's going on and we're trying to bring the rest of the place along. So that keeps me up a lot. But the problems in Scholarcom have been around forever, and we really needed a massive disruption. We needed some kind of disruption to happen. I'm not sure we would have asked for the one we've got. And so we've got a couple of trains that are screaming very fast towards one another. One is the geopolitical situation and the other one's AI. They're going to hit pretty soon and it's not going to look good. And so I feel that the main thing is the really uneasy nexus between AI and open. It's very challenging and it's a problem.
Hello, everybody. Curtis Brundy. I'm the Dean of Libraries at the University of Massachusetts in the U.S. I'm also the editor-in-chief for Katina Magazine that's published by Annual Reviews, who owns Charleston in between. What keeps me up at night is the political things going on in the United States. And it has not helped being here and getting to tour Berlin and going to the Terror Museum and walking through the rise of fascism and seeing many, many discomforting parallels. But to bring it back to like what we're here to talk about today, like it's very uncomfortable to see how flat-footed the American universities have been caught, like in the last 18 months. It's as if we thought, you know, that the days of yore would continue forever. And that's not the case. And in my neighborhood, this has kind of come home to roost in the closure of a liberal arts college, Hampshire College, just down the road. UMass is part of the 5-college consortium that's been around, I don't know if it's 75 years, but a long time. Hampshire's been part of our group for 60 years. They're closing this year. Like, and that's not an accident. Like, the price of higher education in the United States is completely out of sight. You have parents coming in so anxious about how much they have to pay, what's the debt load of their student, what kind of job are they going to get, like in the age of the robot. And yet, here we are. That's the situation the universities put themselves in. And I'll just share one other thing. It's, you know, when the students decide not to go to a liberal arts college like Hampshire College, like they're saying no to the humanities. And Ken Burns, the documentary filmmaker, is a graduate of Hampshire College. And he was interviewed about the closing. And Ken Burns said, you know, he went there to be transformed. More specifically, he said, I went there to have my molecules rearranged. So that's what we lose, like when we lose these types of places. And I never thought I was in the molecule rearranging business, but I think that's actually the business we're all in. We're in the business of transformation, changing people's minds. And maybe that doesn't keep me up at night, all of this exactly, but it just pains me deeply that this is all happening. Our 5-college consortium went out and met at the Hampshire College Library 2 weeks ago. And like 3 days after that, the doors were closed. And students had walked through that library and they did some graffiti, but it was poetry. And it was just these creative kids mourning the loss of something that is really, really unique. And what we need is we need to be able to put the humanness into our culture, into our society. Like the robot is here and the robot is coming. And we're going to miss places like Hampshire College. We're going to miss the humanities. We're going to miss turning universities into credential mills. So maybe it doesn't keep me up at night, but I think about that a lot. Happy to be here.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Curtis. So for those online, please do react however you can react. I'm not sure what platform it is, Zoom or something, whichever. If you can react, if there's anything in there that people have spoken about that resonates with you, and also in the room, put up your hand if you're able. Has anything that anyone's mentioned here resonated with you? Yeah. Oh, 2 people?
One comment about the heat.
Wow, I know. Where's the heat comment? Okay. So, wow, God, check out the temperature of the room, hey? Let's hope online's better. Okay, so now the role of libraries is constantly changing. I've seen this, I've been in this industry for 25 years. I've seen how libraries have changed phenomenally and the teams and the people inside, what you're expected to do all the time. Everything ends up with you that couldn't end up somewhere else because they don't know where to put it. So when we're thinking about how do we accommodate taking on even more, what should also libraries stop doing? So I'm going to go to you, Chris, first. Tell us a little bit about your landscape, what's happening with you.
Yeah, so I'm going to go off script for a minute.
I love it. Do it.
We had talked in our planning thing about something I was going to say, but after sitting in these conversations for a day and a half, what I'm most struck by that I want libraries to stop doing is stop being so damn reactive and stop being followers. Like what we do is what Lou just described. Like we react and we take on more things and the landscape changes. So we do this and then we do that and our university changes. And so we do that. And I think we need to stop being so reactive. We need to start leveraging our expertise because we do have expertise in a whole lot of things. And I think we need to leverage that to start to shape the scholarly ecosystem that we want to enact. And I think infrastructure, open infrastructure is undoubtedly a huge part of that. I think we, again, have to be more proactive in imagining and enacting an ecosystem that treats knowledge and education as public goods that should resist privatization. So that is not the answer I said I was going to give, but it's the answer I feel compelled to give today.
And so you should update it based on what you've heard and what people have said. And in terms of like what you have going on at your institution, is there anything else that you wanted to give people in terms of context when you're talking later about anything? Or you just like, no, that's it. You can move on, Lou, to Fiona.
We can move on.
Yeah, come on then.
Yes, I think in to echo a little bit of what you said there as well, it's really just a case of maybe stop duplicating efforts that are being replicated elsewhere and having a better understanding of where the core values of libraries themselves and the unique skill set that we have can be applied to what needs to be done around campus. Now, just as an operational example, because I'm closer to it, recently I was lucky enough to acquire a bibliometrics and impact librarian on my team. There was also an impact officer in our research office. Those two roles could be very similar, but what we've done there was at the outset when we were designing our spec for our bibliometrics and impact librarian, very specifically we put in that this person must liaise with the individual who's in the research office, because that role and function is quite different, and what we can bring to a similar but very different landscape is very different, so that now the two can partner together with one supporting researchers and students around what they need to do to, I suppose, enhance their research impact, but also work with our research office then to how this contributes to the institutional picture of how our research is doing, and just being a little bit more targeted in the things we already do, but using our skill set to really focus in on what the institution needs in that moment and what we can offer in that space. And obviously in the Irish context, we're very beholden to multiple levels of EU legislation and national legislation. I believe Ireland this week, in the last week or two, has published the bill for reflecting on the EU AI Act, you know, so we're going to have to see what happens there. I believe it creates another statutory body, because we always need another statutory body. And some are arguing already that it's not going far enough. So we'll just have to see what the impact of that will be. And we have multiple things around GDPR and all sorts of other legislation we have to follow that influence how we can act and how far we can go as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Fiona. And Danny, if Chris can pass that down. Thank you.
This has been a very active conversation we have been having for a couple of reasons. One is we know we need to stop doing things because we want to do some other things. So we were already having this conversation, and some of you may be aware that we were subjected to a proposed change proposal that has since been withdrawn, but there was some very interesting clues in the perception of the library in the proposed structure that was offered to us, which is concerning. And so the way we've been looking at the question about how we stop things is we've been doing what we're calling sludge audits. And a sludge audit is when you say, what makes it hard to do your job? And then you find out that it's really weird stuff starts floating to the surface about really just some legacy thing. And so an example was somebody said, oh, it's putting the LinkedIn courses, LinkedIn learning courses into the catalogue. I said, what? And our previous librarian, so this was something that had been asked more than 5 years ago to try and increase the use of LinkedIn Learning, this person was spending a day a month, putting in LinkedIn Learning courses into the catalogue. I said, let's stop that right now. So there's a whole heap of those kind of little things. So it's not a big thing we necessarily need to stop doing. There's a lot of little stuff we can get rid of. So that's one thing. And then the other question is the problem is that libraries, the work they do is often quite invisible. And we're, full of people who are nice people who want to help, which is why it's a nice place to work. But also there's people in the institutions who go, oh, I've never used the library. Don't you? Because it's invisible to them. They never darken the doorstep and they're using it and it's just easy. And a long time ago, I worked for a little while in a marketing department for an energy company. And that was really hard because no one wants to have a relationship with their energy provider, right? They just want to turn the switch on and the light to turn on. And that's what libraries are. We're kind of an energy provider. So we need to put some grit back into the system to make the work that we do more visible. So that's something we do need to do. Take out the sludge, add the grit.
Oh, you've got time. You guys
I
are
just
you know,
I just
you're
love
rocking
the idea of clearing out the sludge. And I'm at a new library. I've been there for 1 year. And librarians are just amazing for holding on to these legacy workflows. And at the same time, we present ourselves as being tech forward, but again and again and again, when technology comes up that ultimately is going to make its way through our doors, we're not at the leading edge of thinking how to adopt it. And the AI stuff it's scary, but it's exciting. And there's some of it that makes sense if we present it as a tool, as Lauren said yesterday. And I would say my library is so skeptical about AI just to try and have the conversation. We did an all-staff meeting, and you probably heard like at the graduations in the US, when the tech person was up there giving the commencement speech or AI was mentioned, like they were being booed, right? So I did a all-staff meeting, and I didn't mention AI. It was actually one of my associate deans mentioned AI, and my staff booed, like they picked it up. And so that's like the level of excitement about the technology. So it's an uphill climb. Because I do see like some of the sludge clearing is going to be like automating some of this horrifically like boring work. Like I have to do it as the dean. UMass has the most Byzantine HR processes I've ever seen in my life. I spend so much time having to wade through like paperwork. And because we don't have an AI system at the university level, we can't share that level of data. So there's no way, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like that sludge is going to go. So I like framing it around sludge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bianca, did you want to add anything? Oh, yes.
Maybe building on your second part of that statement, adding a little bit more grit. I think the thing of the library being invisible, I think we all recognize that. And I think there's a very clear connection to infrastructure. In that sense, library could be considered infrastructure. And is it a good thing that you don't notice that it's there and that things just work? Or is it important to know what that infrastructure is and how it works so we can also consider how to invest in it? And I think that's the link there. And I would argue for a little bit more of the latter to make that more visible. So also supporting your adding a bit of grit.
Okay, so moving on to the next question. I think I might leave the room. What does open mean now? Dun, dun, dun. So Bianca, I'm going to start with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the discourse around open is shifting for a couple of reasons. And one of them is, at least from Europe, I think in the US, it's a little bit of a different situation still. What I see in Europe is that there's a lot of talk about knowledge security. And that is one of the things that is taking up a lot of attention at universities, at libraries. So sometimes it's just that that's the thing of the day. And now we need to focus on that. And then openness, yeah, we've done that. We sort of are 2/3 there. So let's not invest too much time in that and let's focus on this new big important thing. That's one thing. But also it's sometimes seen as a zero-sum game. Knowledge security as a force opposing openness. While I would say that knowledge security, big part of that, also when you talk about integrity, is that openness. So really critically questioning that relationship, I think would do libraries and universities a lot of good. So I think that's one thing that's happening. Weaponization of openness, maybe we can talk about it a little bit more, but that's definitely also something that's happening. And AI also has a very big effect on openness. And I wanted to just pick up on a few things that were mentioned yesterday, but perhaps not elaborated on. And one of them was the remark that was made that because of AI, there might be a retreat on openness at institutions, at libraries, and by researchers. And the answer that was given yesterday was that that was mostly technical. That was mostly about a concern about hitting repositories, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, it's technical, but it's also very much, I sometimes compare it to the discussion on licenses on steroids. Researchers being reluctant on publishing open access because they don't want their research being used by commercial large AI companies. Libraries being more reluctant for the same reason. And I think that also is something that we need to discuss. Like, what do we think about that usage of our content by AI? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Can we regulate that? So that's one very important thing. And then taking for a little bit my position as in open metadata, open research information, I think another thing we're seeing is that the developments of AI and also the profitability of selling stuff as training material for LLMs is having a chilling effect on the availability of open metadata. We've seen publishers doubling down on the availability of abstracts, requesting abstracts to be taken down from open databases. And I think that is also something that we can have a discussion about. And I really liked, and not just because we're here, I really liked the presentation from Wiley earlier today, where it was about, yes, making content and making materials useful for AI, but it's not at the exclusion of having them useful in other ways. And I really want to give kudos to Wiley to, as a big publisher, to having their abstracts available in Crossref and keeping their abstracts available in Crossref. Well, at the same time, they're also exploring the options that AI and licensing their contents for AI afford. So just want to put that up there as a good example.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Bianca. Now, Chris, come on.
Yeah, I want to pick up on the part you said about, because we're seeing it too, of authors who are reluctant and worried about their content being, scooped up and used in these LLMs. And I think, again, it goes back to, like, we have to own our expertise and educate scholars on the parts of the scholarly communication system that they tend to ignore. Right. So, and Dave Hansen's article, which I can't remember the name of it, he wrote with Gunter Weibel months ago. Does anyone remember what that was? Okay. Anyway, look up Dave Hansen, Gunter Weibel, and AI, and you'll find it. They made the point that I think it was them, but that we need to help educate our scholars, because the minute they sign the contract with commercial publisher X for their article, they have then authorized that commercial publisher to do whatever the heck they want with it. So their stuff's going to get scooped up by AI, and they have no control over which AI or for what kind of purposes it gets scooped up for. Whereas if they, in the repository that's owned and controlled by the library, we're part of the same institution and organization, and so our guidelines and standards and approach to what it means to have something be open and what it means to give authors control over the rights to how their own content gets used is what carries the day. Thank you, Heather. It was AI and the struggle for control over something. Over content, over research.
I put it in the link in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Although folks in the room aren't in the chat. So, so I did want to point that out, that, like, the scholars who are worried about, suddenly worried about their stuff getting scooped up by AI, like, that ship sailed. That ship sailed for them, and we have to. I think we as libraries do have a responsibility to help them understand that the who they choose to publish and the terms by which they choose to publish under, they need to pay a lot more attention to it and work hard. We need to help them retain their rights. Yeah, I think that's the part I'll pick up on for now.
Thank you so much, Chris. And it's interesting because I sit in the middle, right? So I'm on a library committee. I don't work in libraries. I work with publishers and service providers and libraries and institutions, but when you were referencing then, you said commercial publishers, but society publishers as well. You know, non-profit publishers.
I was trying to hedge my bets.
I know, but it's happening
Every time
all
I say
over the
publishers,
place.
someone says hashtag not all publishers.
But what I wondered was, I mean, are there any presses? Are there any presses that are doing that? I don't know. I started to think about that when you were talking about in terms of working with AI companies and yeah,
of course there are university presses who are doing that.
Part of your institutions.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the ones I know are being very diligent about giving authors opt-out options.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you.
Can I?
Yes, you add something,
Sure.
yeah. And then we'll go to Curtis.
Yeah, about that question, Ithaca is maintaining a list, or at least was maintaining a list of what they were aware of publishers licensing content to LLMs. There are definitely, last time I checked, some university presses on there. We are having this discussion in the Netherlands as well. The Royal Library was mentioned yesterday. And there's also a real discussion about, okay, we are building a Dutch LLM. Can they use material from the repositories, or do the universities or the libraries have a say on top of the licenses that are already in there? Can they restrict access to that? So that's something like really close to the ground. Those discussions are being had also in libraries.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Bianca. Curtis, please. That'd be really interesting to see how that progresses. Curtis, over to you.
On this point, I think we kind of covered what I was going to mention, because our phone is ringing with faculty who are concerned about publishing under our open access agreements because of this question of what does it mean for my work being hoovered up. And in my take on it, it's more of a principled and like technical, but like we open this stuff because we want to grow knowledge. And so I really don't care that OpenAI is going to use it. I don't care that the companies in China that are making the open source LLMs that are so powerful now that they're going to have access to it. I just think it needs to be open to all if we're going to open this stuff up. And I know other people have different. I've also often thought CC BY at some point, like we're all going to wish maybe we had that NC on there, and maybe we will. But yeah, that's all I was going to say about that.
Did you want to add anything? No. Did you want to? You've got some bit of time. No, Danny.
Yeah.
So I feel like I have been riding the open wave pretty much right from the start. So in 95, like in retrospect, that was really kind of very forward thinking. I didn't know it was at the time. And so it was when I was being a science journalist, and these press releases came across my desk about this new thing called open access, which was a word I didn't know because it was new, but I recognised the names of the people that I had written about in my honours thesis and thought it's time to jump in and do the PhD. And then a position at ANU and starting Australian National University and putting policies together, and starting up what is now Open Access Australasia, and then going over to Cambridge, and one of the first position statements on open research in the UK, calling it the Office of Scholarly Communication, even though we were just three people sitting at a desk, but made it sound like something, and all of these things. And so sort of like hitting this high point, and then coming back to Australia where things are much, much slower to get. So I sort of went back in time. And what has happened in that time is Open itself has changed. So it was all about open access originally. It was just about the paywall. And then when in Cambridge, the research data question came into it. And then we started talking about the question of open research, it all being part of the same thing. And now it's everything everywhere all at once. And it's kind of almost too big. And it's very hard to tackle. And then on top of that, we've got this issues with the not AI itself, but the AI companies causing problems. And there was an article in Nature, I think, was it last week, that was talking about the open data question. This is really problematic because the like de-identified information can be reconstructed basically to identify patient information that might be openly available, and de-identified can now identify people. So big questions around shutting down those databases and pulling the data. The NHS has all this open source sort of programming for their work. They're shutting that down because of AI. The Wayback Machine is being shut down. So we've got all these problems about everything kind of like, and it's self-defense. It's putting up, putting up the walls to try and sort of protect yourself. And so I sort of wonder if this wave is now starting to crash against the shore. And do I just get out and get my towel, dry myself off and walk away. I am really wondering about that. Has it come to the end? Yeah. They're on my dark days.
Oh, God. I mean, I was thinking as you said that, you know, a research data librarian friend of mine was telling me the other day that their repository is being absolutely bombarded with AI bots, with AI crawlers. Just it's so much that they're removing all that amazing work that they did to add in tags, to add in keywords, to make the content discoverable, to increase the impact of that work in the repositories. They're now removing because of it, and it's just terrible. Would you like to add anything? I did warn you.
I know. Well, just on the rights retention piece, I think that's probably very poorly understood by a lot of researchers, really. And I know certainly within our own institution, we have all the policies and the statements around both open access and rights retention. And yet we still get multiple queries from researchers about what this right license requirement means, and my research will be scooped, and what do I do with it? You know, and I suppose we are trying to do the effort of making our repositories as trusted as possible, you know, but it's not going to necessarily solve the issue of an AI tool scraping the data. But I think if researchers understand that this is a possibility, and I mean, they are using AI, whether we like it or not, and whether we trust it or not, they are using it. I mean, I have 11-year-olds who are coming home having engaged with AI in school. So, I mean, we're going to see this more and more. So I think once the researchers are educated about the implications of what might happen to their research, it gives them at least the power to make a decision around it.
I had so many different angles I want to take on this, but I also want to say, like, I think we have to think about researchers across the spectrum of disciplines, and many of them are using AI, many of them are skeptical about AI, and then at my institution and many of yours, many of them are creating AI, and they are training the students who are going to create AI and go and work for these companies, whether you think they're evil or not. So, like, we have to be careful not to be like, researchers are scared of this. Some are, some aren't. Yeah. Many scholars, you know, we've had these debates at my institution where there are some scholars who are like, I'm not sure whether I want my stuff, you know, gobbled up by AI. And other scholars who say, but actually this research I'm doing in trying to, and I am not a material scientist, but basically trying to extract from the material science engineering literature new recipes for new materials that are safer and more whatever. I need you to let me use your material, yeah. Right? So, like, there are good, valid, scholarly and socially good uses that some of our scholars are making by employing AI with scholarly literature as a training data. So I just think we have to be careful that we are complex in our talking about who thinks what and is doing what. But, and also I laughed, it was when you said that your staff booed you, and that was a laugh of commiseration. Yeah.
Did you get booed?
Well, I didn't get booed, but we did a survey of our staff, right? And so you look at any surveys of like our faculty using AI, and it's like 75% of faculty, I think it's something like that, are using AI in their research and in their teaching sometimes, but certainly in their research. It's the exact opposite in my library. 75% have used it once a year or less. And even those say, well, some of them will say, I said I use it, but that's only because I'm trapped into using it by this tool that has it embedded. So we have a gap to figure out how to close there.
Chris, is that report publicly available?
Our staff survey, no, we told them that we would not do that. Okay. I think.
Just wondering if the data's out there for people to use as a benchmark.
I mean, the data on how much faculty use is out there somewhere. You can Google it.
Yeah. Okay. Or Bing it, or I don't know, other search engines. Did you? Yes, you do. You have a moment.
Can I add one thing? What you just mentioned about data sets now being taken down because of the privacy implication, because so much more can be done now. That's on one hand, that's really worrying. On the other hand, it also made me think of another role of the library that I think the library should continue doing in this landscape. And that is the information literacy and the critical reflection, and really be a critical force also. Because yes, it might mean that we are more strict in data sharing now and changing those rules of engagement. I think the library can also play a really important role in that discussion. And that's completely apart from data sets now being taken down, which is very sad.
Thank you, Bianca. And I think what I've seen throughout this conference and things I've been hearing about when we talk about AI, I mean, AI has been around since machines started in what Alan Turing in 54, 56, I don't know what date I saw the other day. And we go shopping, we get recommended things, there's AI things that are doing that. But AI is a technology. I know someone said tool yesterday and someone else criticized them for saying tool. I think it's quite subjective. It means different things to different people. You know, it's a thing that does something. So we have to just be a little bit kind to each other and a little bit, accepting of people using it in different ways. So on that, moving away from AI, I'm sure it'll come back in because I feel like Curtis might mention it. Who is responsible for trust and integrity of the scholarly record? Curtis, over to you.
All right, I feel like we just headed down a different direction here, but I want to say one thing about I was just thinking about my staff, and I mean, our ratio is exactly the same, probably 3 to 1, 3 completely skeptical of this technology. But I do just want to recognize I had a meal here with someone who works in business, and that person was talking about how quick in their industry they're automating and just laying people off. And in the United States, like when our librarians are thinking about this and they see what they're doing, they see how powerful this is, it has got to be scary. When you get laid off in the United States, like there may be a little bit of unemployment insurance, but like you are losing your health insurance. Like it puts people on the precipice. And so I also want to remember that like when they're booing AI, like it's coming from a place of legitimate concern and fear for what's going to happen. And I think all of us with kids, I've got a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had about, they don't frame it this way, but what's a future-proof career for me, Dad, is basically what they're asking. And I'm like, I don't know, I work with people, be involved with humans, insert the human into whatever your expertise is. So you will, people still like to sit and play chess with each other. They still like to play Go, even though the robot can pound us into the ground in those games. So, but to integrity, the question was like, who's responsible for it? I think the answer to that is self-evident. It's all of us. How good of a job have we done? Self-evident, not very well. I presented at the online Charleston in between 2 years ago. I actually forgot about this, and I was trying to find some notes I wrote up about this, but I found my presentation from 2 years ago. And that entire talk that I did 2 years ago here was about publishing integrity. Librarians, please pay attention. This is huge. It's connected with, all the talk earlier in the day about trust. Like that's really what we're talking about. And in the United States, where they're coming after science and they're using, headlines from, Nature and Science, where they're talking about all the fraud in science, like they're weaponizing that. And it allows them to cherry pick results that they want. It allows them to use it for political attacks. It allows them to just question, the best that we produce. Like all our work together is to produce and advance knowledge. And when we're not minding the store for integrity, like it undermines everything that we work on. And so for the last few years, like this has been the most, I try and talk about it every time I can. Some of you maybe even heard me talk about publishing integrity, but I will just say we need to do more. The librarians in particular need to take some ownership for this. And there is not to plug Katina, but there is a series written by 2 of my librarians at Iowa State before I left at Katina, just talking about how librarians could envision a role in the electronic resources department in holding the line on integrity. Like when we're looking at your publishing dashboards and we're seeing where the publishing is happening and we're seeing irregular red flags and things going on, like librarians should not look the other way with those things. They should know people like someone just sent a greeting through Wiley to me for Michael Streeter, one of the research integrity people at Wiley. Like, librarians need to know people like Michael. And when we see those things going on, it's all hands on deck. Like, we really got to do everything we can to maintain integrity, or else I think everything we're working and talking about is going to be undermined by, I was going to say the dark forces. That's a little dramatic, but people will weaponize and use this if we don't mind the store. So a plug for research integrity, publishing integrity, librarians. I think you should really educate yourself about this and see what you can do in your institution. Become an integrity sleuth. Like, those people who are integrity sleuths, they're not magicians. They're just people who care, and they put time into looking around and seeing what is going on and where things don't look right. And then they share that out. That's where the retractions come from. Like, we all need to, I'm soapboxing, but we should all police it.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Curtis. If you just pass it down and just each add something to it. Yeah.
So there's a bit of a conversation going on in Australia that we don't have an Office of Research Integrity. There's no sort of central, there's been calls for it many times, and what integrity is managed in the institution. A paper just came out in the last month or so which indicated that it's not very well managed in the institution, or perhaps from the institution's point of view, it is very well managed in that it's buried. And so I attended something not that long ago that was 3 research integrity people from 3 different universities. So relatively young, so I don't think they were senior people. It was an online event, and it was one of those ones where you could only put the thing in question and answer. You couldn't do a chat. And they were talking about all this different stuff they were doing, and that they needed to do, they were doing these courses and blah, blah, blah. And my question was, have you talked to the library about the courses they're running, about choosing where to publish and the like? And they said, oh, no, that's a different thing. And it's like, tell me you don't know what you're doing without telling me you don't know what you're doing. And so we've got people whose job is research integrity who apparently have no real understanding. They're not here, right? They're in their research integrity office doing research integrity apparently on their own. So there's a bit of a problem. I don't know if that's replicated elsewhere in the world, but that's what's happening locally, and that really concerns me because the library's invisible, and what will we know?
Well, I think that's happening all over the place. I've been speaking to researchers recently as part of a project, and I had one example where someone said, well, I haven't spoken to the library in 10 years because I asked them to do a Boolean search for me, and it didn't connect with me the results I wanted, so I've never been back. And I'm like, wowzers. And then I had another person who's an established researcher, and he was saying, I don't use AI. My colleagues do. I want to know when they're using it. Like, I want some transparency, but I want to go to a library and say, what are trusted tools that I can use? Because I just don't know, because I'm not that he's scared of it, but it's just like, it's a bit much. So, but then he was saying to me, I think libraries should do this and this. And I'm like, do you know what? I'm at this session on Friday, and when the video comes out and it's public, I'll send it to you, because you would be staggered of what libraries are actually doing all over the world. Libraries just sometimes aren't great at communicating the amazing value and the work that you're already doing, because there's just no time, right? Because there's just not enough hours in the day. So Bianca, over to you.
Maybe as an added anecdote to that about the invisibility of libraries, if I may, I found it really noticeable yesterday in the keynote presentation at the beginning. Brilliant, all the stuff. In the end, the question, okay, and what's the role of publishing and libraries? And I could just see eyes glaze over. Yeah, people should read more books. That's not the role of libraries. Anyway, apart from that, research integrity. What I want to say about that is the discussion about trust markers that we had. It's of course one part of research integrity, definitely not the whole part. But there, I think, again, having those to the extent that those trust markers are also metadata, the importance of having that metadata openly available, so the evaluation of those trust markers is available to everyone, I think is really important. And going back to what keeps me up at night, publishers, generalized, developing their own tools, and STM having their research integrity hub. Those are all great developments into, well, shepherding this, but it also makes me concerned about what that means for who is excluded, who cannot afford those tools. And does that mean also, what will it mean also about how these entities or these publishers are going to be viewed as doing less well on integrity because they can't afford to use the tools that are developed? So again, I think it's a responsibility of the whole community, and should be accessible to all.
So I'm going to go back to the first the first part of the question, you know, who's responsible for trust? And what I'm going to say is I think that everyone who contributes to the research ecosystem has a responsibility to ensure that the scholarly record is as trustworthy as possible. Trust is a whole nother thing. And there are so many factors that impact whether somebody trusts scholarship or not that are way beyond our control. And I think we need to remember that our job is to do our part to ensure that the scholarship is trustworthy. And whether somebody trusts it or not, you know, we don't have a lot of control over that. That's trust is a social concept, and I'm not a sociologist. So anyway, and then I want to pick up on and make sure I understood you correctly, Curtis. It sounded like you were saying that you'd like to see librarians become research sleuths. Integrity sleuths, like the ones
Not
who.
all of them.
There's some of them. I'm skeptical.
I mean, it's
Because I
happening,
think
right? It's happening. So like PubPeer, the platform, which was created as a platform for researchers to talk about publications and have conversations, became a platform for, oh, look at this image duplication. And Sholto David is an example of someone who really went above and beyond and then ended up actually as part of the court, as the ruling, got money as a researcher as part of the settlement. And that's in the news. I know that because we will come back to this, but Fiona is going back to Ireland and she is leaving us at 3:30. So I just want to make sure if you can just add yours, just so I make sure that you're adding yours. Don't do like a mic drop moment to us, you know, because I'll be handing back to Chris, you know. So yeah, just.
Thanks. Obviously, I suppose, trust and integrity. I mean, who's responsible for the scholarly record? Multiple agents, obviously, but a lot of the reading I've been doing around it seems to put the library in a very passive space. You know, kind of the library can help with this, it can help with that, and that's maybe weak. You know, I think we have an opportunity here to really position ourselves as being a really strategic partner in this process. We have the core skills, I suppose, of the field, you know, around critical thinking and information literacy and, you know, related skills for that to kind of really engage with the research process and ensure researchers are fully aware of where they can publish, how to evaluate their sources, if they're using AI tools or research assistant type tools, which we're kind of looking at as a proceed with caution space at the moment. But when we're looking at those tools, we have the skills there to critically evaluate them and maybe say, yes, some of these are okay for this purpose, but they're not the source. They're not what you should trust. You should really go back to the original sources, look at what you're doing there and have, you know, don't produce a packaged answer and treat it as the source. And there is risk, I think, going forward that might happen eventually. So I think we are positioning ourselves there to really counteract that process and enable people to make informed decisions about what they're using, both in terms of sources and in tools, and in where ultimately that research is going to be published, whether it's open access, gold, diamond, or whether it's some form of, you know, kind of traditional scholarly publishing route. You know, we can enable, we have the skills to enable that process, and we can be trusted and be partners. And I think we have to really embed ourselves in the spaces where all of these different agents are operating. And in practical terms, for example, for us, that means when new researchers are being educated on the research process in general, including integrity of research, we need to be in that room as well, speaking to them about how they describe their data and how they, you know, evaluate their tools that they're using, and how we can kind of navigate the whole responsible metrics field with them and so forth. So it's really just being in the places where they are and not siloed off doing a separate job somewhere else and hoping they notice.
That's brilliant. Thank you. You know, one thing that struck me is, like, over the past few years when I've been speaking to libraries, is how they've said, like, tech companies have really recognized the roles of people that work in libraries and like, oh, we want that skill set. And then you get these that's not very kind, 3-figure salaries. Who wants a 3-figure salary? 6-figure salaries, and then the library can't compete. And then they're gone, and that skill set's lost. So it is an incredibly valuable skill set. So if Fiona does suddenly disappear, she moves, she's not coming back. So you have to wave, yeah. But she's very dedicated because she's going to be in the taxi and she's going to sign in online. So remember to ask a question for her. And if there are any questions that we don't get to answer, we will answer them after in a separate document. Chris, can I pass back over to you, please, to finish what you were saying? You were talking about sleuths, you were talking about researchers.
Yeah.
I mentioned
so I'm a little skeptical of librarians being sleuths for any research that's not like right smack dab in our area of specialization, because most research is incredibly specialized. And the kind of stuff that's happening on PubPeer where they're looking at image manipulation and so forth, that's biomedical researchers. And even my biomedical librarian is not qualified to be evaluating the statistical methods and the production of those kinds of images. So I think, I liked what you said about, we need to continue to teach and lean on sort of long held library strengths and values around critical thinking. And I'm kind of going, if you can maybe go back to like the first thing I learned about reference, which is, we're not there to give an answer. We're not there to say, yes, trust this, no, don't trust that. We're there to help people ask better questions and know what kinds of questions and inquiries they should make of the materials and the tools and the data and the code that they want to use and reuse. And I think that's our superpower.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, well, I think that's a very fair point, and I was not suggesting that librarians try and turn themselves into, I'm forgetting her name, Elizabeth Beck, whoever is the image expert, right? What I'm suggesting is we are licensing these open access deals now with many of you in the room, and it's our responsibility, just like I'm shopping for a used car, that when I look at the car, I'm verifying I'm getting what I'm paying for. When you're not holding line on research integrity, like what does it look like? It looks like this. Like at Iowa State, we were covering the charges for Frontiers. We noticed we tagged this person as our frequent flyer. And for the first year, like it wasn't that unusual, but someone who is just a research scientist in one of the labs went from publishing with his lab, publishing maybe 2 articles a year over like an 8-year span to 5 articles, 15 articles. I mean, it just shot up crazy. So we saw that because we were looking at our dashboard. And to me, that's part of the sleuth role as well. It's being curious and looking for these red flags. When we looked into this one, without any of these fancy screening tools, like the electronic resources librarian tracked out the author network, looked at, well, who is this guy publishing with from our university? And it was not very far before we started crossing the path of like really shady people in the paper mill world and shady institutions, right? So that's what I'm getting at. Like there's a piece of this. And then there's also the fraud is not always that sophisticated, right? Like the tortured phrases, like there's some pieces of this that if you're curious and you're looking, you will see things. The Frontiers rat penis, right? There's just crazy things that are coming out. And like librarians should be aware enough when they see these and realize that they can contact the publisher. They can have a relationship with the research integrity office. We had a sleuth contact us at Iowa State because of a retraction they thought that we should know about. It went to the research integrity office. One person overseeing 2,700 faculty. Like that person only had time to work on like the messiest of things. So she punted that over to us because I had been having these conversations with her about research integrity and said, hey, can you all look into this? And we didn't it wasn't a huge deep dive, but it was a pretty quick look to see, yeah, this is one of ours totally embroiled in all of this sketchy stuff that would be damaging to the university. So those would be some examples. Like it's not trying to turn librarians into research scientists, but there's some piece of this that is so blatantly obvious. And I think it's going to get more sophisticated with AI, but I do think some of this librarians paying attention could flag some of this and surface it.
I feel like there were some of the tools that you had that you were able to use to look at that data. Are they tools that you pay for?
We didn't have tools, but there are tools available now.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm talking going back 4 years ago. Now I forget the
Okay.
names of it, but I think Clear Sky has one. There's a couple of these tools that are just like what they're using, the publishers are using, but are on the
But you
institution
were doing it
side.
manually at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, publishers in the room, like, we really got to figure out how to share information about all of this, because I feel like you all screen these things and you see sketchiness, and then it does not get communicated back to the institution. So sometimes these bad actors, you know, I know you all are trying to see as they move across and the bad person goes from one publisher to the next, but like a lot of that never comes back to the institution. So those tough conversations that need to be had at the institution about people that are going astray are not happening. And that's part of like the circle we need to close.
That's a whole
I could
nother
talk about
session.
publishing integrity a long time.
That's about academic consequence. Right, are you off? Are we all like, yes, let's all wave to Fiona. Thank you, Fiona.